Hello and welcome everyone to this edition of CloudBytes. It's our second release for 2023, hosted by Dean Dorton. Presenting today, we always have our wonderful Philip Massey here, our Software Services Director at Dean Dorton. We will be covering, like I said, the second release of 2023 with Sage Intacct. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the chat feature. I believe you can access that at either the top of your screen or it's on the right side of your screen. We will be monitoring it throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure to share any technical questions with our presenters at the end. If we do not address your question during today's presentation, contact information is included at the end of the materials. So please reach out after as needed. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you by the end of this week. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do not hesitate to ask questions. And without further ado, I give you Philip Massey.
Thank you, Julia, for that great and wonderful introduction. Just real quick, want to make sure that everybody can hear me.
You sound great, Philip.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Philip, can you hear us? Are you still there? Philip? I apologize for the technical difficulties right now. We'll make sure that Philip's sound is working. I promise we all heard it just a second ago. Philip, if you can hear us, we can no longer hear you. You may want to stop the presentation.
Can you guys hear me now?
There you are. Hi, Philip.
Hello.
There you are.
That's weird. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you. Try saying something now because I'm worried I lost you again.
Okay, that might be.
Okay, there you are. There you are.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Let's see. So again, just real quick, preview company. If you'd like to get one, let us know by June 9th. We'll be happy to get you into the program. And as far as next week goes, we will have about half of our team at the Sage Partner Summit, learning all the new and wonderful features of the Sage Intacct application, roadmap, mingling with third-party vendors, things like that. But if there is a slight delay in our responsiveness next week, we'll try not to be that way. But if there are, then that's why I would appreciate any patience with that. Okay, so our agenda. We got this fancy little agenda here, but basically we're going to go through all the new features of 2023 Release 2. We've got some good ones. We've got some, mediocre ones, I would say, but we will jump through as many as we can in the time that we have allotted. So you'll see some icons as we go along, and this will indicate how you will access these new features. It'll either be some configuration is needed, some update to permissions is required, and or no action is necessary. Sit back and enjoy. So it could be a combination of the top two. In some cases, it could be the bottom one. I do like the bottom one, by the way, the lounge chair with the pool umbrella there. Makes me think of being at the beach, and so that's a nice thing. So let's jump into the first section, and that would be company and administration. So company and administration, so lockout emails. Intacct now sends an email when a user is logged out. And I can actually verify this because I have been getting those emails, or I got a few of those emails over the weekend for my account within Dean Dorton's internal instance of Intacct. So didn't see them come through until late Sunday and had to go in and fix that. But these are emails that will go out when they are locked out of the system. And it'll have a link in there to so that you'll know what you're locked out of and so forth, and that you can get back to your Sage administrator to get back into the system. I think I skipped a few slides. I'm sorry. I seem to be having technical difficulty today. Okay. All right. We're good. Company administrative, we've got some new and updated permissions, new permissions for AP, AR, GL, order entry, and purchasing that gives you greater detail over some different things. For example, within accounts payable, the TPAR, taxable payments annual report, that is only for Australian companies, but that has a new permission level. One that is possibly more important is in AR, and we will actually look at this one a little bit later in more detail. You can edit the reversal date on posted payments to correct the date in which they would hit the GL. And that is a new permission item that you do have to give to people. There's also on general ledger books, locking closed periods. So that's another step that you can take within the closing process of actually locking the periods, and we'll take a look at that as well. There's some more viewing permissions for employee users within order entry and purchasing transactions. Makes it more efficient for you to be able to grant overall permissions to individuals with those modules, and we'll look some more at that. And in fact, we'll take a little bit of a look at that right now, purchasing and order entry. So employee user permissions have been updated. Instead of going in and giving view permissions to order entry transactions and then having to go in and go to possibly each transaction definition and add the person to those transaction definitions, you now can go in and click one box and view all for employee. So that will give the employee the ability to go in and view the different transaction definitions that you may have in order entry and in purchasing. They can see the transactions, they can see the transaction types, they can select the view link to drill into the details of a particular transaction, and they can run order entry reports that include all transaction types. So previously it says here employee users could only list and view transactions with a transaction type equal to quote. Because they are employee users, they were limited and were not able to get into the types of documents that typically do affect the general ledger from a posting standpoint. Now that has been opened up so that you are able to give them those types of permissions. So here, for example, is a screen view of prior to view all for the employee, and then here's one after. So you can see they now can see over here the shipper inventory, sales return, sales orders, etc. They can click on the view here to the left of the listing of documents in the view, and then of course they can see the details here. So this is a multi-screen kind of mesh together here, showing you how you can start with the shipper inventory, get the listing of transactions, click on view, and then view the details about the actual transaction. After permissions is enabled, you are here, and in the sales analysis report, you will have the ability here to see all of the different types of items or transaction definitions as well. So that really opens up what an employee can see. All right. So a couple things to keep in mind. The permissions for the employee users, add, edit, delete transaction, do not change. So if they're working with a quote and their ability to put those in, add, edit, and delete, do not change. That's still there. If the restrict employee user access to purchase documents is on, the restrict employee user access is enabled on configure purchasing page. Employee users with view permission or view and view all can only see the quote type transactions that they created. They cannot see the quote type transactions that other users created. So essentially what we're getting to here is that the permissions and the capabilities that were there prior to this release in and around quote type documents, which if you remember, quote applies from a purchasing standpoint as a requisition type document. So don't just hear the word quote and think sales. That does apply on the purchasing side for requisitions. So those permissions have not changed. They've just opened it up a bit so that they can see additional types of transactions now. This just states here as a reminder, purchasing reports, similar to what we saw with the sales reports earlier. Employees can now run reports with that information. Employee users can only create purchasing transactions that have a template type of quote, right? And that 99% of the time translates to requisitions. Restrict employees is a setting that will keep them to only looking at their own requisitions that are created. Same thing here in that next particular bullet point. So here's the restrict employee to purchase documents. Here's where you would check that box in the configure purchasing module. That again is a box that does exist today. So if that is checked, then they still will only be able to look at their purchase requisition, for example, type transactions. Okay. All right. So to sum that up, I guess you would say there are there's more capability now for employee users to be able to see all types of transactions within order entry and purchasing, but their ability to add, edit, delete into quote type documents, purchase requisitions, for example, has not changed at all. So that remains the same. They've just been given a bit more ability to look at transactions. So let's talk about cash. Cash is king, right? Everybody loves to say things like that, and to a large extent, it's true. So let's talk about cash. You can now create non-reimbursable expenses from existing credit card transactions. So here is a box to check in the credit card account information screen and the employee expenses clearing account to list. So this will basically allow you to take credit card transactions that have been brought into the system and push those into expense reports for particular individuals, and have them set as non-reimbursable expenses. And that will help with the ability to enter those expense reports and, reconcile who charged what and so forth within the system more readily. You can't do this, however, if you have any of these three things involved. And I've learned a bit lately that multi-base currency companies is kind of a stickler in Intacct, but you will see later on that they have fixed one of those items. So if you're doing these, that unfortunately you cannot take advantage just yet of that employee expense feature. Here, just as a reminder, and this is where the gears come into play down here, because this does take a bit of configuration. So 2 slides back, we showed you the place. There's breadcrumbs of how to get to where you need to go. And this basically just is some reminders here of how to do it. So again, you're taking those credit card transactions that come through and you're able to push those to expense reports within the Intacct system so that an individual has a complete expense report for everything that's been charged through, perhaps on their company card or anything like that. Here is a reminder here to be sure that the employee is populated on the credit card transaction. So it takes that employee dimension on the credit card transaction to know where to, or whose expense report to put that credit card transaction on. Bank feeds, you can now view more data from a bank feed transaction. So there's some new data fields on the bank transaction list that give you even more information. You can see the list of fields here. Bank reference number is one that I know a lot of folks have asked about. Some additional payee information is something that individuals have asked about in the past. So really glad to see this come about. And according to our little icon here, you can take the day off because you don't need to do anything for this. These fields are already going to be enabled in the system, and you will be able to add them to your views, add them to your reports, and of course, see the data. Creation rules support inter-entity transactions. So previously you had to create IETs or inter-entity transactions for any journal entry that was generated by a creation rule that captured data across 2 entities. Now those rules that you can put in place, so you don't have to hand key all these transactions in, perhaps you can put creation rules into the system with the bank feeds. Now these will create the appropriate IET transactions so that your inter-entities balance. Okay. Automatically created now. That is a great enhancement to the application. It's based on different settings in your company. For example, the IET settings themselves. What accounts constitute something that is an intercompany transaction, and where does that need to be booked within the systems? The due tos, the due froms. This is it's a great concept to have into the system now, and this is one of those cases that was driven by an idea in the community. So if you don't know about the Sage Intacct community and the idea portion or portal piece of that community, it would be fantastic to get acquainted with it, reach out to anybody on our team. But this functionality is coming directly from someone creating an idea in the system and enough people voting it up to where it actually becomes a feature in Intacct. Okay. Creations, IETs created and what location is used. This is a chart here. I will leave this chart for you. And of course, I haven't said this yet, but all of this information is also in the release notes. You should have gotten a release announcement as you've been logging into Intacct this week. You should be seeing those things pop up. Please read through those release notes. You will see this information there. We've tried to gather it together for you here in a more concise manner, but all of these details are in the release notes as well. So taxes, boo hiss, right? Taxes, this actually, I did leave this slide in here. This relates only to Australian companies, but Intacct is, of course, internationalizing the software. And now there is a new taxable payments annual report to meet the needs of companies that are in Australia. Time and expenses. So Sage Intelligent Time Enhancements. You can track employee time across multiple entities and sync that data in real time now. So you can switch between different entities in SIT or Sage Intelligent Time. Previously, you could only do one, but now you can track in multiples. And the synchronization of the data is real time, or at least as close to real time as you can get, and doesn't have those waiting periods anymore. So making that Sage Intelligent Time product more flexible and more real time. And there were a couple more slides about that, but we don't really have anybody taking full advantage of the Sage Intelligent Time. So if you have any additional questions about that, let us know. Web services. So a dev portal blog has been added. Development portal blog has been added. If you have questions about Intacct Web Services, about development efforts, about anything around the dev side of Sage Intacct, this is a fantastic place to get that information. And I believe they are working on a full revamp of the developer portal. I think it's sort of in a beta type process now, but they are working on a full refresh, or they may have made a little more progress since last time I checked. The full refresh on the Web Services Developer Portal to make it easier for organizations to find out how exactly do I connect through the API to Sage Intacct. So look for a lot of exciting changes in the web services and developer world around Intacct. And I would say the next, maybe not the next release, but certainly the 2 or 3 releases after that one. A lot of new capabilities seem to be headed down the pike for developers. All right, Sage Intacct planning. And I think I clicked forward too many times. Actually, we're going to skip the Sage Intacct planning, sorry. That is a budgeting and forecasting module that is available for Sage Intacct, but we don't really have that many customers that use it. Best thing to do would be, if you have questions about it, just reach out to us, and some of our team members can, no charge, discuss with you the feature enhancements that have been made. General ledger. All right, so this one is cool. Locking closed periods. It's a great thing to have from an accountant's perspective. Add locked closed periods permissions. This is a separate permission. You have more control in your books. And then French customers, I don't think that we have any on the call. Adjusting entries can still be posted to a closed period In phase one, which is release 2, we're creating the locked closed periods permissions. In phase 2, enhance the permission to not allow the ability to post adjustments, recurring entries, or any type of activity in a locked period. So you're going to have closed periods, you're going to have open periods, you're going to have closed periods, and then you're going to have locked closed periods. So you could have, for example, this is May, you could have 2022 in a locked closed period state. You could have 2023 periods closed, but not locked closed. And then, of course, going forward, you could have those periods obviously still open for that. So it's another step in the closing process. It's another ability to really just lock down the permissions and the capabilities within the Sage Intacct application. To enable this, you'll go to General Ledger, Setup, Configuration, Accounting Settings, and Transactions. You'll see an area there to allow and show warning for transactions to a future period, and then under that, enable the accounting sequence. So that's the current configuration. And then in the new configuration, you also have enable closed statutory reporting periods to be locked. So you would simply check this box, and that would give you the ability to have the locked closed periods. Enable permissions. So in the permissions for your books, you'll come in, and in the release, if you look at it today, you'll see this lock closed periods. You will need to be granted that permission in order to be able to lock the periods. Sorry. And then simply go to General Ledger, All Books, and Lock Closed Periods. And you'll now have this choice here to be able to not only close periods, but lock closed periods. When you go into this window, you'll have something very similar to the closed button or the close area. Top level, you can specify the entity or entity group. If you don't, it's going to do it for everything. And you can only lock periods if they are closed. When locked, all periods up to the selected one are locked. And it's basically just like the close period screen. It's just you're now locking closed periods. So as an example, accountant might have open and close permissions for the books. Controller has open, close, and lock closed periods for the books. The controller closes the books in preparation for the financials to prevent any additional activity. Of course, if it is just closed, then you could still post adjusting entries, but not regular entries. However, the accountant has permission to open closed books at any time and post activity as well. Could do that. So then the controller would have an ability to close locked or lock closed periods as well. Okay. Controller locks the December 2021 period to prevent the accountant from opening closed books and adding any additional activity as she prepares the financial reports. And that's what the accountant then sees when if the accountant goes back to try to open periods, they cannot because they have been locked over here. It is possible to unlock closed periods. You can unlock a period by locking the preceding period. And so there's not a screen like you have close and you have open. There's not a screen for lock and unlock. You go in and you lock periods to a certain point in time, everything after that is unlocked. So if you lock up through 12/31/2022, then 2023 is unlocked. It could be open or closed, but it's unlocked. If in that company you were to go back and lock through 2021, then 2022 would become unlocked. Now, it wouldn't open it necessarily, but it would become unlocked and then could be reopened. Okay, so there's no unlocked window, it's just a lock window, and that lock window goes through a certain period. Everything after that is unlocked. Again, you'll get copies of these slides, and all of this is in the release notes. So if there's any questions, you can certainly reach out to us, but there are lots of there's lots of information about it in the actual release notes themselves. All right, so let's talk about accounts payable. An easier way to access vendor records. And as somebody who has worked with Sage Intacct now for over 12 years, this is probably the most thrilling little enhancement that I've ever seen, in all honesty. You can also pay bills from the bills list now in a multi-base currency company, so that's nice. This is something you don't need to configure, you don't need to set up. You can go relax at the beach, as it says right here. What has changed? How many people, and informal show of hands, feel free to raise your hand at your desk there, but how many people have ever clicked on the name of a vendor in the vendor list and been taken to the AP ledger for that vendor, set a couple of interesting words, and then hit the back button to get back to the list view, and then hit the edit button on that screen? I can't tell you how many times I have actually done that, and I still do it sometimes in demonstrations, and I'm like, crap, now get back up, right? So a little change, but let me go back right here. This is probably the most understated sentence I've ever seen in a PowerPoint slide. Meet expectations of what should happen when you click on the vendor name. And again, this is a little thing, but I can't tell you how helpful it is for somebody who is as absent-minded as me. So, so you can still get to the AP Ledger report by going to the AP Ledger report, and then you can select the vendor from and the vendor to. So the report's not going anywhere. You can still get to it. You can still see the information. It's just now when you click on the vendor name, the most novel thing is going to happen. It's going to take you to the vendor's master record, which I'd never thought about that before, but that's a great enhancement. And I got to quit that because this is being recorded. Somebody from Sage might watch it. I doubt it, but they might. Pay from the bills list in a multi-currency company. So you've had the ability to pay from the bills list in non-multi-currency companies. So truthfully, most of the people that are on this call are probably going, I thought we could do that already. You can in a single currency company, but if you were in a multi-currency environment, you could not. The pay link wasn't there, which was nice because, you know, at least they didn't put the pay link there and then not let them click it or something. You know, that would just be cruel. But so in multi-base currency companies, and we do have a fair amount of those, enable multiple base currencies. So maybe you've got a Canadian subsidiary or an Australian subsidiary or a British subsidiary, anything like that, and you have multiple base currencies enabled, you can now click a pay link when you're in the bills view, and you can pay bills directly from that screen. And you can see it highlighted there. You can do it at the top level. You can do it at an entity level, and you'll still have the links to pay the bills. What will happen, for those of you who haven't used it, whether you're single currency or not, is that it will take you then to the AP bill payment screen, and you'll be able to either cut the check immediately, or you'll be able to add it to your outbox so that you can cut the check within a group of other checks that might be there. So you can pay a bill with the pay link if it meets the following conditions. It was created at the same level in which you are viewing the bills list. So if you create the bills at the top level and you're in an entity level because of restrictions or something else like that, you will not be able to pay it from the link because they're not created at the same level as you're trying to pay them. As long as the bill is not on hold, release to pay, you do have to previously released all the line items in this bill. The amount must be a positive amount, which seems, fairly intuitive. But if you have all those things, sorry, clicked one too many times. If you have all those things, then you can now, in a multi-currency environment, pay bills directly from the bill listing screen. So you got a little bit of a preview. We're going to jump over to accounts receivable now, and we're going to talk about, look at that. Let not all the AP people be taunting all the AR people because it's easy to get to a vendor record. They've also made it easier to get to a customer record. And by the way, if you have AP people that are taunting you in the AR section, that's interesting. I'll just leave it at that. Edit the reversal date of posted payments. That is a really cool one as well too. Date format options. That's a nice change to be able to have. Sending dunning notices by customer group instead of having to figure out how to arrange your customer numbers or types or all of this. You can actually use some of that grouping functionality in Intacct for those. And then applying credits in bulk through import. And hopefully nobody has to do that too much, but if you need it, it's there for you now. So an easier way to access customer records. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but let's just say that if you click on a name of a customer in the customer list, it actually opens the customer's master record. Enough said, right? Again, one of the most understated benefits in any PowerPoint slide, meet the expectations of what should happen. So glad to see that though. Absolutely glad to see it. Don't mean to make light of it. Took Sage a little while or Intacct a little while to get around to doing that, but absolutely delighted that it's in the system. You can click on, for example, AB Square, and it will take you to AB Square's customer record. Right? Takes you straight in there as opposed to taking you to the AR Ledger report, which is still available through AR All-Tab reports in AR Ledger, just like the AP Ledger was available. Editing the reversal date on posted payments. This is it's a really cool feature, and to me, this is probably one of those built for finance by finance functions that is really shining. If I could have you guys all raise your hands, I would. And actually, I probably should have built something into this so that I could do a poll question, and I apologize. But I tell you what, on your computers, raise your hand. There's a little hand raising thing in Teams. Raise your hand if you have ever entered a date wrong in anything. I see some hands. Okay, I thought for a second there, I haven't really done this that much, and I thought for a second there, the numbers that I'm seeing by the little hands meant how many times you had raised your hand. And I was going to say, Amy, okay, cool. You don't have to raise it 6 times, but I guess that means that Amy was number 6 to raise her hand. That way, if I can see who raises their hand first. Pam, thank you very much. All right. Edit the reversal date on posted payments, and no shame in bad dates. I've done that a lot myself as well. So what has changed? You can now edit the reversal date on posted payment reversal transactions. So listen to that. Edit the reversal date on posted payment reversal transactions, allowing you to change the date on which the reversal transaction posts to the GL. If you make a mistake, and I love this, or a few, they had me in mind when they wrote this. They truly had me in mind. If you make a mistake or a few, because you can't just make one, right? You got to make a couple, you can change it. So it's another way within the Intacct solution, in my opinion, that accountants don't have to worry about what the tool is letting them do. They just do accounting, and the tool takes care of everything on the back end. Currently, you can specify the reversing date for a payment. So if you want to reverse it, you can come in here and reverse the transaction. You specify the date, just as it shows right there. However, once you reverse it, the state of the reversed payment was locked. If you make a mistake on the date, fat finger it, don't see it until after it's posted, then sorry about that, but you can't change it. Now, if you come in and add the permissions right here, and again, you'll get a copy of these slides in a PDF format, I believe. You'll get a copy of these slides, and you'll be able to see this location. You do need to come in here and check this box to enable edit of reversal dates. And you can see the highlighting come up there. And also, don't forget to enable your permissions. So this is a configuration with our gears here, as well as this lock indicates that it's a permissions piece. So here's an example. So what's great about this is you don't just open it up willy-nilly to everybody being able to edit that reversal date. Maybe, to go back to our 2 people, maybe the accountant can enter a reversal, but only the controller can edit a reversal date within the system. All you have to do at this point then is you've got a reversal here that's been done. You'll notice if you have permissions that the reversal word is hyperlinked, and you can click on it. You would then simply enter the date for the reversing transaction and post it. Once it's posted, then Intacct takes care of all of the different dates within the system. And you can see here that we've got some different dates listed on this particular screen. So it's not a new process. It's not a different process. What they simply did was they allow you to go into that reversal screen a second, potentially even a third time if need be, but they allow you to go into that screen again and re-enter a date, and that overrides the previous date so that you now are reversing on the second or third date that you put into the system. What this is showing you here is that only the latest posting details are shown. So you won't see a posting on 5/2 and a reversing off of 5/2 and then another posting on 4/30 or anything like that. You'll just see the posting on 5/2 as if that was the original date that was keyed into the system. Now, for safety's sake, there are some times where you cannot edit a reversal date. You're at the entity level and you're trying to edit a top level payment. So again, that gets back to the level in which the transaction was entered. If the period is closed, if the payment summary is closed. So there are a few cases where you can't make that edit of a reversal, and those are security things. Now you are able to edit the date format, and you can let the system use your personal preferences for that date format. Previously, everything was sent out with MMDD. You do have an ability now, which it shows you there, an example. You do have an ability now within your email templates to display dates in the user preference setting, right? So in the AR invoice, the AR statement, and the dunning notices, you can display it in the user preference dates. So that goes back to your preferences, your individual user preferences in the setup of the system and what you've chosen here to be your date format. So if you're doing that with your preference in place, it would be, as you see here, 2019-12-31. Without it, it would be 12/31/2019. So that could be a little thing. Again, some of it is part of the internationalization of the software, so to speak, but that also can be handy a bit to have. So this one's fairly exciting, dunning notices by customer group, so that you can have more variations to your formatting within the system. So previously, they could only be sent by either customer type or a range of customers. So if we were to look at this screen here for dunning notices, it's from and to customer, and then it's customer type over here. And if we fast forward to how it looks today, you have customer groups here. So you can still do the from and the to. You can still do the customer type if you would like, but they've now added a choice for customer groups. So that gives you a lot more flexibility in how those dunning notices are set up, how those dunning notices go out, who they're delivered to, precisely who they are delivered to, and you're not having to, in most cases, have just a whole bunch of customer types out there that you really don't need. So that, in my opinion, is a very nice feature. Apply credits in bulk through import. You can use the customer payment import template to apply credits in bulk. Caveat there, you cannot bulk reverse the applied credits. So this is one case where let's double check that file. Let's triple check that file. If you import 500 credits, 100 credits, or heck, 50 credits, you can't bulk reverse those applied credits. So once they're in the system, they're in the system. Advances are not supported at this time, but they are on the roadmap. The template, you can get it from here. That's the AR payments template under the company setup checklist, or in the receive payment new screen, then the import button, you can download the template through that link. There have been some fields added to the import file: inline credit number, inline credit amount, adjustment number, adjustment amount, negative invoice number, negative invoice amount. So these are the different items that could be stipulated in the file in order to do those bulk imports. If you have let's say you issued a credit to multiple companies through an adjustment or a negative invoice, and you need to apply those, and let's just say it's some discount for a yearly subscription, and you've given it to 200 of your customers. You could then come into here after those negative invoices or adjustments are created, populate the file and import those credits to apply them to the invoices. You're not importing the credits, and I should not have said it that way. You're importing the application of those credits through this file process. You can see here, these are the fields. They're in green in this particular case. So, and again, as with all of the columns in a Sage Intacct import template, they have done a great job of stipulating what needs to go into the column, where the column is in the user interface, etc. Considerations. Verify the import data. Again, you cannot bulk reverse applied credits, and I would say this probably, if you do this, that is a good thing to highlight and to have in mind, and maybe to circle in red here. You cannot bulk reverse the applied credits. You can import payments for unique invoice number or adjustment number transactions only. If there are multiple invoices or adjustments with the same reference number, the import will be unsuccessful. Upload a single row first to test your import data. It's easier to make corrections if one, maybe two, three are incorrect, and then you can adjust the file and re-import them. Dashboards. So dashboards. So Intacct has begun to include some role-based dashboards in the software. And you might think, well, that's nice, but we've been on it for a while. That's okay. You can go in and take advantage of these new dashboards in your instance. Sorry, I went too far. These are the new dashboards that are created here, and you will have an ability to enable those in your environment. New service industry companies, the dashboards are included automatically. Existing companies, you just simply install the dashboards from the dashboard library. To check and see if you are on that template, which that is a very common one to be used even if you're not, quote, service industry. You could go in and check that. And then here's the dashboard library. And these are the 6 to install. And you would then have those 6 dashboards in your instance of Intacct. And here is an example of a department manager dashboard. May not be exactly what you want, but it might also be a very good starting point. A couple more things, including what I consider to be one of the best enhancements that I've seen in a while. So drill down through account groups on financial reports. You can drill into account groups in the financial reports now, analyze your data more quickly. Previously, for example, a balance sheet, if you looked at current assets and you wanted to open it up, it would take you to it would open the detail on that screen, but it would not take you into the general ledger report. And in other words, the 42 million, that is not hyperlinked. It is not enabled in the system. Now, if you're looking at that and you're looking, you notice now the 41,000 is hyperlinked and can take you to the general ledger report. And you can see here, potentially you can see, it's a little small, but those numbers do match. So you're able to drill more into account groupings now, which total assets is definitely an account grouping, and get down to the data at the group level without having to drill into each of the individual components of the account group. Now, as a special note, if you do have a filter in place, like this one, you cannot. That will disable the drill back at this point. I do expect that to be fixed at some point or altered at some point in the future, but for right now, that is still the case. Now, there are a few slides in here for interactive custom report writer and some of the abilities and features and functions that they have added for the report writer. But I'm going to skip these. They will be in the slides that you receive, but I'm going to skip them just so that I can get to what I think is probably one of the coolest features. So if we talk about user experience, you can, and this isn't it, but if you go into your subscriptions now within the system and you have access to the subscriptions area underneath company, you can get more information. If you say, what exactly is contracts? What does that do? And, you know, these 4 lines of text don't really do it for me. There's a button in here now for details, and you can talk to experts. You can watch a video on how it works. You can probably download a data sheet or something along those lines. So it gives you more information about the subscriptions. Now, what I think is one of the best little features, other than, of course, actually bringing up the customer record or the vendor record that I've seen in a while, is that they've updated most of, and this says more, but most of the import templates from the old XLS format to the SLS-X format. That means that you will no longer get a lot of the warning messages about this file doesn't match the file type for the file that you're trying to open or something along those lines. And it also means that you have more flexibility in creating the templates, more functionality in creating the templates than maybe you did before. So I think this is a little thing, but it is a fantastic feature to add and an update. Okay. And that is it. We are just shy of 3 o'clock. Julia, do we have any questions?
Not at this time, but we do have a few minutes left if anyone wants to get those in now. I know Philip ran through a lot of good information here. He's a great resource, so we'll just stick around for another minute or two, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. This was one of the most feature-packed updates that we've had in a while from a core standpoint, making a lot of good core changes to the system. So we really appreciate that.
Philip, do you have to be an admin to access the subscriptions?
That is a good question. My first answer to that would be no. You just have to have permissions to the subscriptions, but I would not take that answer to the poker table with me next week in Vegas. So I'd have to test that out and see, to be honest. I don't think so. The admin really, in my understanding right now, is more about user management, that type of thing, a lot of the core and system and stuff. And yes, subscriptions could be included in that, but I'd have to check it and see. And I will, and we'll get back to you. Good question. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I very much appreciate your time. And if you have any questions from today that crop up later, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll include the contact information when we send everything out to you guys. So, I appreciate your time. Thank you.